We are at the Emirates Stadium for the Gary Neville podcast in the wake of a pretty awesome performance from Arsenal against Spurs in the big derby here. Arsenal have won by 4-1. Eberechi Eze got a hat-trick. And the very simple question for you, Gary, is how good are Arsenal?
Very good. A lot to like about them. I think that over the last few years they've been building towards obviously trying to win a title, and they haven't won that title yet, but they do a lot of things very well. And I think the narrative going into today's game, which I wasn't even entertaining sort of in the last 48 hours, is this, without Gabriel, or Gabriel's injured. No one's interested anymore. Arsenal fans aren't interested. Mikel Arteta is not interested. And what they've demonstrated again today is they've now got a squad that can cope without players being fit. And you know during a season, at the start of a season, you know that certain players are going to miss certain games. And so we've seen Nketiah come in today, slot in really comfortably. Mosquera's done it throughout the season. So don't let that narrative build. Nobody's interested in excuses. We heard last year he had no Saka, Ødegaard, the year before, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, no Saliba. No, now he's not that Arsenal team. The mentality is such that they've moved beyond that period whereby they sort of are looking for excuses or might think that it could impact them if a player's missing. They've got a really good squad. Their drop-off between player number 1 in the team and player number 2 who comes in if that player's missing is small. Declan Rice would be a problem, but then he's an exceptional talent and someone who's very different. But today I thought they were excellent all over the pitch. I'm not an Arsenal fan, I'm not a Tottenham fan, but watching that first 25 minutes I was almost willing Arsenal to sort of go and play and if he kept hearing me in that first 25-30 minutes about pushing it through and not getting caught up in these safe passes. I think sometimes when you watch Arsenal, they dominate possession, they push up the pitch, they really sort of like sustain attacks and push teams in, but they recycle the ball at that point then sometimes too easy and take the safe option. I thought what they did well in that first half was they kept pushing it through into Eze, into Saka, into Trossard, because that's what Tottenham don't want you to do. And every time they did that, they caused problems. It wasn't a lot in the first half, but the 2 or 3 times they did it, they got through them. And Tottenham will come on to them obviously shortly, but they're a team waiting to get beaten by a very good Arsenal team, and that's what Arsenal did. And after what happened yesterday with Liverpool and with City, it was a much needed victory today, and they've sent a message to everybody in the league.
What struck me, and you're talking about Nketiah coming in specifically today for Gabriel and a player for every position or 2 players, when Madueke came on late, you thought, they've got him too. And Martinelli was back on the bench today, and Ødegaard is there, and Gabriel Jesus, we're told, isn't that far away.
I forgot about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Havertz and Gyökeres.
Exactly, and I'm looking at the way that team's performing and thinking, who are you leaving out of this team?
It's not only a squad that should go on and win the Premier League, and I'm not jumping ahead of myself here, it's a squad that I can see winning the Champions League in the next 2 or 3 years. Might not be this season, because sometimes when you go in to win your first Premier League, you become so consumed by that, and then you can sometimes get done in a European game in a midweek on a 2-legged tie. But they're getting to that level of performance and resilience and stability and consistency. You have to be consistent. It's a very consistent performing team, this one, that Mikel Arteta's got. And you're absolutely right. I mean, Trossard, who I thought was sensational today. I mean, Saka was as well, and so was Eze. But Trossard was fantastic. And he's been fantastic, I think, for most of the last couple of months. And he was the one, when you think of Madueke, Martinelli, Eze, Ødegaard, Saka, you're thinking, well, he's the one that's definitely going to fall away. He's the one that will be used maybe 10, 15 games this season, but he's pushed himself into a position. He's a really intelligent player. He knows how to play the position of left-sided forward, stroke midfield player. But Mikel Arteta, like I say, you've got players when you've got a squad that are really sort of pushing each other. Madueke looked really sharp when he came on. He didn't do much in terms of impacting the game, but you looked at him and thought, ooh, that's going to be dangerous. And you look at Eze, just looked at the end of the game like he looked Brazilian at the end of the game, Eze, when he was sort of wandering around the pitch. Beautiful to see that confidence in an English player. You think of Brazilians going around the pitch doing that, and South American players with their sort of mentality of sort of enjoying their football and their love of sort of what would be almost taking my podcast. They're not
your podcast.
I've just said it, but he was at the end. He was a little bit, and yeah, it was brilliant to watch. I loved watching them, and that's the thing. I mean, the interesting thing is they've got Calafiore and Timber at fullbacks. Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ben White are probably better going forward. There's not much between Ben White and Timber. Miles Lewis-Skelly, I think, is obviously better than Calafiore going forward, but they've got real options at fullback, real options at centre-back. That's it. The only player you'd be slightly worried about losing for a period of time would be Declan Rice, because you can't replace that. That's your Roy Keane, that's your sort of Rodri. That's the player that sort of holds you together, that you know, there's only one of them, so you wouldn't expect there to be a situation, but they have got options if obviously he wasn't there, but it would never be able to replace the ability for him to be powerful on set pieces, his running, his tackling, his impacting the game going forward. Yeah, but I'm really happy with Arsenal watching them this season. I like watching good teams play football, and I think at times they've been a bit safe. And it was that Newcastle game, wasn't it, where I think Mikel Arteta just got the team balanced right. He went to Anfield and he played a game against City where I just thought he was a little bit handbrake on, and I accused him of that at the time. He's now getting that balance right of the flair in the team and the confidence, and it's the intent. It's the intent. Don't keep passing it back. Don't keep passing it sideways. You're better than that. You've got players up the top end of the pitch, probably 7 or 8 of them, by the way. Doesn't matter which of them play. You can pass it to these players when they're marked. You can give it to Saka with a 6'4" centre-half behind him. He'll hold the 6'4" centre-half off. He won't just hold him off, he'll roll him. He'll go one way, he'll go that way, and he'll take it inside. And that's what opens up the game. Passing the ball to players who are marked, who've got world-class ability, is what this Arsenal team need to have confidence to do. And I'm seeing that more and more, and particularly today. He didn't score from a set-piece today. In fact, to be fair, the set-piece is probably the worst I've seen from them. But their open play game today, which they've been accused of obviously lacking, it was really good, and that was good to see. And I think they'll get better, and they'll get more confident. Yeah, a lot to like about what Arsenal did today.
And just finally, I mean, we ought to ask you to give an appraisal, never mind the fancy stuff at the end, of Eze's game.
Look, before today, I think he had 2 goals in 15 matches. And he's going to play for Arsenal Football Club, that's had Perez and Bergkamp and Ian Wright and Henry, and many, many more. So he's got to add numbers. And what he did today was really important. Impacting big games, scoring in big games. He's now got 5 in 16. He's now got 4 Premier League goals in 10 matches. They're the sort of numbers you have to hit if you're playing for Arsenal Football Club. And so what he's got to do is, we know he's a fantastic player. I think he's better in the 10. I love him in the 10. I love him in the 10 because I love Ødegaard in the 10. So it's 2 great options to have. But why I like him in the 10, I think he's got the ability to beat a man with the ball at his feet. And I think he's got the ability to sort of go and do something that's more unpredictable maybe than Ødegaard. Ødegaard's a beautiful player to watch. I think the rhythm in his game and the way in which he plays is fantastic. But I really like Eze in there, because I think this Arsenal team just needs to be a little bit more unpredictable in the final third. So when you've got Saka there, you've got Eze there, you've got obviously a centre forward, whoever that may be. It's going to be Gyökeres, Marino or Havertz. They're not the most flair. They're never going to be flair players, those 3 up front. So it's important to have them players around you. Obviously Trossard or Martinelli or Madueke can be the other one on the left. It's important to have that sort of excitement, that thrill, that idea that the team that you're playing against don't know what you're going to do, and they're going to pop up in different areas, and he can, if it's tight, which it will be for Arsenal many times here when teams are behind the ball, he can go and beat a man with the ball at his feet. He can run without the ball and make runs in behind. So I like him as a 10. But those numbers are important. He's going to focus on that finishing. His finishes were really good today. A little bit of luck, I think, with the first one with the deflection. But his third one was beautiful. And he could have got a 4th as well. So, really special day. Sometimes when a player signs for a club, it just feels right. And from the moment he walked out, as you said in the commentary, with that, with those jeans on, with that smile, and the Arsenal fans around him, it just felt warm. It felt good. And, you know, you think about a player who's so happy. His family, I think, were all with him as well. So, yeah, I think it is working, and it's going to work more. But what he just needs to do now is become a cold-hearted, ruthless killer in front of goal like he has been today. Go and score goals, because that's where you'll be judged. If you're going to be a number 10 for this football club in a title-winning season and in a Champions League winning team, you're going to have to get up to that 15, 20 goals. And he can. And he will, I think.
And he scored the first hat-trick in this game since Alan Sunderland, who was famous, of course, for winning a cup final against Man
Don't
United.
mention Alan Sunderland
1979.
to a Manchester United fan, Peter. That's a swear word.
I remember watching that with my schoolmates. Anyway, that's another story. Let's move on. Today's game was played in the context of, we'll come to Liverpool, but City at Newcastle last night.
Should we discuss Spurs?
Well, do you want to talk about Spurs first?
I think so.
Go ahead. No, seriously, you're absolutely right. You need to talk about Spurs.
Look, they're going to get a lot of criticism off the back of this game. And look, I think there is a lot of love for Thomas Frank, and I think all of us want him to do well. I think all of us want Spurs to do well, just generally. I think that them winning a trophy last season, as much as I didn't enjoy them winning it against my club, I think if I wanted teams to win trophies like Newcastle, Tottenham, I don't want there to be this sort of monopoly at the top where teams don't win trophies for 20, 30 years. I don't think it's healthy. But that first half does need some discussion. And look, I've played against teams. I've never been in a team, thankfully, because I only ever played at a club that were on the front foot. And if we were on the back foot and defending deep, we always had a counter-attack option. We knew what we were going to do. I've played against teams where they've come out to play and they've forgotten that actually they're playing football. They're thinking they're just playing one part of football, which is trying to stop the other team playing and playing deep. And from the first few minutes, it became apparent that Spurs had no idea how to get from front to back. And the only option or tactic, shall I say, that they had was that they were going to get a free kick in their own defensive half, and that the keeper or one of the centre-backs was going to lump it up to the other centre-backs who'd gone forward. If you're playing football like that, I think at a top 6 club, top 7 club, which obviously Spurs are, you have to win, and it has to work, because it looks really ugly when it doesn't come off. And that's why you see Thomas Frank at half-time go for a more what would be progressive system with Simons coming on and the 3 centre-backs coming off. I'm not against 5 at the back in certain games. I'm not against playing bigger players because you've got Arsenal set pieces to contend with. So I'm not against the idea of it. But if you're going to do it, you've got to be good at it. And when you've got Odegaard, Kudos and Richarlison, you've not exactly got 3 front players that are going to be able to either, those long balls that were being played and that sort of, when they were clearing it out from the back, you're not really giving them a chance to succeed. I mean, I think 2 of them, that front 3, didn't touch the ball for the first 15 minutes of the match. They didn't have a shot till the 55th minute. The first shot in the game was the Richarlison brilliant goal, which actually, to be fair, for 10 minutes made the game a little bit interesting, but not too much. But I think they've got to be better than that. I think that's something that isn't going to be tolerated or accepted by such a great club. And I thought that they looked like a team who'd worked on how to stop the opposition and had forgotten to think about how to win the game. And when you push a team too much into that glass half empty mentality, and a group of players into that glass half empty mentality or that style, it can really look ugly at the end of a match. And look, I think today it could have been worse. Could have been 4-0, it could have been 5-0, it could have been 6-0, and it could have been more embarrassing. But Tottenham have got to pick themselves up from this pretty quickly and work on an identity that they're going to stick to, form as their own. I know they're in transition under Thomas Frank from obviously manager last season who played a completely different style, so it's understandable. But I just think there's a little bit of confusion about, are we a team that are going to try and play through and play football, or are we a team that's going to be rugged, hard to beat? And you can be both. I've said this about Arsenal when they've got the balance wrong both ways. They were too easy to beat 4 or 5 years ago, and then they became a little bit too solid and too dependent on set pieces. You've got to have that balance of defensive and attacking sort of work that goes into a good team. So it's just a note of caution that I think there'll be a level of criticism from Spurs fans in particular off the back of that match, because they had no idea how to play through the thirds of the team, through the sort of different sort of defence into midfield. Thomas Frank's there coming on to an interview now, but it didn't look like the back 3 knew how to get on the ball. It didn't look like they knew how to get the ball if they were with the back players into midfield. I don't think it ever got into midfield, but if it got into midfield, I'm not sure Paulino and Bentancur would know how to get on the half turn and pop it into the front players. There seemed no pattern of how to play through the team that you see through so many. So that's got to be worked on very quickly, because I had a level of concern there for Spurs today. Yeah. Okay, so moving on now to Newcastle Man City. I was lucky enough to be there. It was one of those great St James's nights under the lights, really intense, and you can understand why against almost anyone Newcastle can win under those circumstances, and they did. What did you make of it, particularly through
City eyes, because we're talking about them in the context of the title race.
Yeah, I mean, look, from a City perspective, that's a game that I think that you could definitely say they're going to lose, and they did. They're not what they were. I think they give you encouragement. I've said before, when you see that back four, it's not what it was. The midfield's not as physical as it was. And that midfield three for Newcastle and the front players, they're a threat. And with St James's Park crowd behind them, that was definitely a game that they could have lost. I thought City would win, but they didn't. When I think about the games that have gone on up there this season with Liverpool, Arsenal and City, who have all gone up there, Newcastle have been really good in the Liverpool game. They were unlucky, so unlucky. Obviously, Anthony Gordon got sent off. The Arsenal game was a real battle and struggle. Arsenal, I think, did quite well up there. It was a massive win for them. So Newcastle are a team that can push the best teams in this country really hard. The midfield three is amongst the best. But for Manchester City, I mean, the amount of chances that were missed in that game, the amount of chances that were given up in that game by defences, and that's why I just think City are going to fall short this season. They've got some fantastic players, they've got an amazing manager, but they're inconsistent and they give you encouragement and they're beatable. And it's going to cost them, I think, because this Arsenal team are more consistent and more solid and more reliable. So, yeah, from a City perspective, it's a little bit up. You think like that, they'll get close, they'll sort of egg you on a little bit. You think, oh, are they going to go and win the league? And then all of a sudden you'll just... And I think that's what we're going to get for most of the season. And I think Pep Guardiola's anger at the end of that game was an anger that probably stems from... that's a killer. That's a killer, because I know that to win a league and to go to be where we want to be and be where I need to be, I had to win that game. To send that message to Arsenal ahead of the North London derby that, by the way, Pep Guardiola's on your shoulder and we're here. But now I think, are they, 6 points off them? Which, look, it's not irretrievable. Seven, sorry. Yeah, not 7 points off. It's not irretrievable. But I think they're always going to be like catching up. It's a little bit like, I might be talking absolute rubbish here. Do you know Donkey Derby?
Yes.
I used to go play Donkey Derby at Blackpool, where you throw the balls up the thing and you think your donkey's catching, all of a sudden it falls back and then someone else goes ahead of you. It's a little bit like that when you can't quite get up level, and that's how I feel City are this season. They're just not quite there, and probably will take that analogy out because it maybe doesn't work, and there'll be a lot of people thinking, what's the Donkey Derby? But yeah, that's how it feels a little bit watching City. They're just, something's missing, but for Newcastle it was a great win.
Obviously there are other clubs up there who, at large, the public don't expect to stay up there. The one that people did expect to stay up there was Liverpool, and they've had a horrible day. How are you viewing Liverpool's predicament at the moment?
I'm torn a little bit. Torn between a lot of respect and they've built up a lot of credit, because when you win a league and you've got players who've won the league 2 and 3 times, and you've won Champions Leagues, and you've got a manager who's come to the country for the first time in his first season and won a league, you could think that's up here, credit in the bank. So that's still there a little bit for me, because I know how difficult it is to win a league title, and that still remains. And you can drop after a league title. We've seen many teams drop their standards and drop their points totals after a league title victory. So that's again not something that's unusual. What is unusual is the severity and the immediacy of the drop, and the worrying signs that are appearing. I said a few weeks ago that I felt that they probably couldn't continue to do what they're doing, and I'm just calling upon lived experience, and I don't think we ever lost 6 league games out of 7. I can't think that ever happened in my 20 years at United. But what I do know is that we did have seasons, or we did have moments in seasons after we'd won a league whereby we let our standards drop for a month, and we might concede too many goals, and we might lose a game or 2, we might lose 3. I don't know. I can't think back. We didn't feel like we lost more than that, but maybe we did. And when we did, there was an intervention, because a blip is 1 or 2 games at a club like Liverpool, Arsenal, United, and City. When you lose 1 or 2 games, when you lose 3 or 4, you have to do something. You have to do something collectively, and you have to do something individually. You have to recognise the danger that's presenting itself and nip it in the bud. It's the thin end of the wedge. You can't lose 6 games in 7 if you're Liverpool Football Club, who are the title winners and champions. You can't do that. It's unacceptable. Let's be clear about that. So we can't just sit here now and say, okay, they've got credit in the bank, they'll come good. There's a real... I'm not going to use the word crisis, because crisis suggests that we're talking about managers and players being thrown out of the club. But I'm not at that stage by any stretch of the imagination. But as a collective, I think the manager has to change the style or the system, and he has to help them. And that to me means being more solid in midfield. It means being more solid at the back, and I'm talking about personnel changes. So Kirkes yesterday, obviously, he's struggling. He just is. That Konate's struggling. So do you have to put almost like a little bit like Arsenal have done at times, a little bit like City have done, almost 4 centre-backs in your back four, and just keep a narrow, tight back four and tell everybody that you're adapting and that you're changing and that you're going to mean business to keep clean sheets and stop teams having chances on your goal. And then in midfield, you're going to start to put a narrow four in there. And that could be Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch and Wirtz or Gakpo just tucked in a bit more narrow on that side. And then you might just leave Salah off Ekitike or Salah off Isak or Isak and Ekitike up front. 2 of them, just leave them up there and make sure they just work back as a 2 and just do something a little bit different. That feels really basic, and it feels like, to be fair, I'm telling Arne Slot, a world-class coach, what to do. But I've seen world-class coaches that I played for and world-class managers drop their ego on how we're going to play, style of play, forget the fact that we're a great side and we're a great club. You're not, at this moment in time, a great side and a great club. You're actually, to be fair, easily beatable. So you have to do something different. You have to basically take everybody really seriously, like you always would do, but you take them really seriously and pay them some respect by making sure you change and do something different. So I called on that a few weeks ago, and I said I thought that maybe Joe Gomez should play right back and Robertson should come in at left back, and they should just play as a narrow back four and be a little bit more pragmatic. And then each individual player, that's the collective. Something has to change in the collective in terms of how they're going to play. In the individual side of it, you've got to strip yourself right back. Think of it as to the foundations of your house and rebuild your house. That's looking at everything that you're doing, everything that you do, whether that's sleep, whether it's stretching, whether it's eating, whether it's the minutiae of detail. Just do everything better than you're currently doing. And tell yourself that when you go into that tunnel, no one has worked harder than me, no one has prepared better than me at any point in my life in this last week. Now that means mentally, that means physically, that means, maybe a little bit less time spending with the kids that week. Maybe you're going to bed a bit earlier. All those things that you might have doubts about what this sort of physical sort of lag is being caused. And look, I'm calling upon points in my career where I didn't sort of play well, and I thought, right, what do I need to do? I need to strip myself back. I need to really go back to the basics of how I made it as a football player when I was a kid. And really go back to the point of, right, I've got to prove myself all over again. Because I'm nothing currently. I'm nothing. The credits and the sort of ability that I've got and all the things that are going to be gone very quickly if I carry on playing for this football club at this level, because you'll be gone. And that was always should be the same at a Real Madrid, a Liverpool, a Arsenal. If you're playing at that club, you've got to play at a high standard every single week and be brilliant. And if you're not good for a period of 2 or 3 months, the danger is that you're out of the club at some point in the very near future, and they've got to guard against that. And that's why it's worth just having a look at everything that you do in all areas of your life. And look, these players are very professional, so this is not a call upon me to say that these Liverpool players are unprofessional. I think one of those hardest working bunch of players I've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years of commentating in football. They're one of the most professional group of players. They're fantastic with the media. Their manager is fantastic with the media. I'm just talking about when you lose 6 games in 7, you've just got to go back to the very beginning of your journey and think about how you build up that confidence again and that ability to win football matches.
I think that's really interesting what you've just said, Gary. Really good insights at what it is to be a top professional footballer. It occurs to me as nothing more than a fan that everything in football essentially is measured against expectation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether you achieve what people think you're going to achieve. And is it fair to say that Arne Slot, who, as you rightly say, has so much in the bank, is suffering for an expectation he created by overachieving, really? What I'm saying is, if they'd finished 5th, 6th, 7th last year, qualified for Europe, people would have said, OK, he replaced Klopp, that's par. and there'd be a whole different ambience around the club. I mean, is that a fair observation to make?
Yeah, I mean, look, what he achieved last year was truly spectacular, and I said that at the time. I thought Liverpool would experience what they're experiencing now last season, the season after Jurgen Klopp leaving, and I said that publicly, and I owned up to it. What he did last year was absolutely out of the ordinary. To not get the players that he wanted in the transfer windows, to keep that stability, which may, in hindsight, look like a actual good thing for him. But generally, I think what he did last year was spectacular. But I don't think it's about what he did last season, setting the standard, and then this season causing himself a problem. I think it's more what that club expects just generally over a period of 50, 60 years. They expect to win the league title. They expect to be involved in league title. That football club does not expect to lose 6 games in 7 Premier League games in any season. So I think he's causing himself a problem now. And look, I don't want to go down the route of, there's no way that Arne Slot should be in danger of losing his job. And I've heard murmurs, and you go on social media, all that nonsense. Forget that. I know, look, some Liverpool fans will say, well, don't talk about my football club like this. But come on, let's have some sense here. This is a really good manager who's a brilliant, I think, front man for the club as well, in the way in which he handles himself. He's got real class. So for me, he's having a really bad time. I think he's got to somehow reverse back down the road quite quickly and do something different and intervene and sort out what he thinks he is, that makes maybe some really difficult decisions that could be, they're staring him in the face. Maybe give the players a little bit of help in respect of the makeup of the teams that he's picking. I love the style of play, by the way. I love it when they go and sort of punch for punch. But when you're going punch for punch with teams and you're not coming out on top, you do have to get 60 feet. You do have to change that. You do have to do something different. So I think the players will be expecting that of him, let alone the media, the fans, and everybody else. But yeah, look, I think that Arne Slot is a real challenging moment for him. He's going to come under pressure. People are going to start saying those sort of fatal words of, is he in trouble? But let's not get too carried away with that. I mean, he's just signed 450 million quid's worth of players, and he's got to try and settle them in. Those players have got to step up. Quite a lot of the players that have come into the club, well, there's 2 things. One, those players that have come into the club have got to step up and become Liverpool players and prove that they can deliver for the football club. The players who've been there for a long time, who are the leaders, captains, experienced players, they've got to basically provide some stability in the dressing room so that those players who have come in can basically sort of feel as though they're not having to take all the pressure themselves. So, look, there's a job of both groups of players in the dressing room, the one that have been there for a bit, the ones that have just come in, and the job of the manager. They've got experience above them as well. Liverpool are only a few points. They're not going to win the league this season, but they're only a few points off the Champions League still. It's still tight at the top, but they need to get back to winning ways quite quickly, else it'll become a problem.
Okay, the last club we really need to talk about, and I'm using this to set us up for next week's game on Super Sunday, is Chelsea. That they won at Burnley surprised very few people, but they are now closest to Arsenal. It might not be first and second by the time it kicks off, but it is now. So in the context of what should have been a routine win yesterday, but also of next week's big game, Chelsea.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting next week for Chelsea, and a good measure for them. I think what we'll see with Chelsea during the season is that they will win a lot of football matches. They'll win games that we think they should have won, but I think they'll also be inconsistent. I think like the other clubs that I've mentioned, and we've talked about Liverpool and Manchester City, they'll tease us and they'll get close, but then I think they'll dip and drop points, and then they'll be they'll drop down to 5th and 6th, and then they'll come up to 4th. And I think that's where we'll see them move between sort of 5th and 2nd, 6th and 3rd. That's what I think. That's where we'll see Chelsea sort of operate in the season. And because it's still quite early, but I think, look, Champions League football, they're trying to build something there. They've got a lot of young players. They've spent a fortune. It's probably not happening as quickly as they wanted. I don't think they're anywhere near a team that can win the league yet, being honest with you. I think when I look at them, they look well short in a number of areas, but they're good. They're a good team. They're not a great side. I don't think they've got great players, but they're a good team and they're a good squad, and it should be, obviously, with the investment that's been made. And I think they'll finish in the top 4. top 5. I think that's where they'll be, and I think they'll do okay, and they'll tease us at moments where we'll think, oh, are they getting close, and are Chelsea the nearest challengers? But I don't think that'll emerge as the season goes on. But next weekend's a real tough test and a real good time. You know, that's where you really find out about these types of teams. Are they ready to step up? You know, we've asked it of Arsenal for the last few years. Are you ready to step up, guys? Come on, are you ready to lift this title, or are you just going to always be seconds and thirds and, you know, happy losers, if you like? And losers is the wrong word, but happy runners-ups. And Chelsea, I think, will want to win a title in the next few years, but they don't seem to be close to it at this moment, as far as I can see.
Well, big test for them next week.
Big test.
So we'll look forward to that.
The future of Ethan Nwanery's potential loan move is suddenly uncertain, as Arsenal remain wary of repeating past setbacks caused by injuries. According to recent reports, the club is open to sending the young midfielder out on loan this winter, but the idea raises immediate questions. Nwanery has become the talk of the moment after a report from the Daily Mail suggested that Arsenal are considering a temporary move for the 18-year-old. Despite his limited minutes this season, the thought of letting him leave, even temporarily, comes with significant doubts. Back in October, Mikel Arteta publicly insisted that Nwanery would have plenty of opportunities to play, pointing to the fact that the teenager had already been called upon when Martin Odegaard was injured. "I don't know, but I don't work with expectations," Arteta said at the time. "I work with what the players can give in the context of where the team is at that moment." Ethan played 2 Premier League matches early on because Martin was out. He's played in other competitions and he'll play more. Yet the reality has been very different. Nwanery has logged fewer than 500 minutes this season, appearing in just 5 of Arsenal's 11 Premier League games, none of them as a starter. His only starts came in the 2 EFL Cup wins over Port Vale and Brighton, and in the 3-0 Champions League victory against Slavia Prague. The arrival of Ebereki Eze and the promotion of Max Daumann have tightened competition even further. And despite injuries to Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, and Noni Madueke, Nwanery's pathway has only narrowed. It's easy to forget how young he still is. At 18, and having first debuted at just 15, like Daumann, these are formative years where consistent playing time is crucial. The busy festive period could open that door, but with Odegaard, Madueke, and Kai Havertz all nearing their returns, there's a real chance Nwanery could slide even further down the pecking order. This is why a January loan sounds logical on paper, but it also sets off alarm bells. Arsenal's season has already been shaped by injuries for the second year in a row, and squad depth has never felt more essential. A single setback among the attacking players over the holiday fixture run could thrust Nwanery back into an important role almost overnight. The more sensible approach may be to reassess in the summer, once the squad naturally reshapes and the club have a clearer picture of their needs heading into 2025. Only then would a loan feel more secure, ensuring Nwanery actually gets the minutes he needs rather than risking another stalled development. Even then, nothing is guaranteed. Supporters will remember Serge Gnabry's loan to West Brom, intended to push him closer to first-team football, but ultimately a move that derailed his progress before he rebuilt his career in Germany. Arsenal's recent history with loans has been mixed at best, and too often unsuccessful. For now, the club must weigh the immediate needs of the squad against the long-term growth of one of their brightest prospects. Whether a loan becomes the right option, or another cautionary tale, remains to be seen. But the complexity of Nwanery's situation extends beyond simply playing time and squad depth. Inside the club, there is an ongoing debate about how quickly young talents should be exposed to the pressures of elite-level football. Some staff members argue that Nwanery's technical level is already above many players his age and that keeping him close to Arteta's structure will accelerate his development. Others believe that without consistent starts, and without a clear pathway to earn them, his progress could plateau. The uncertainty has also stirred conversation among supporters and pundits. Several former Arsenal players have expressed concern that the club may be repeating old patterns, where promising youngsters become trapped between first-team aspirations and inconsistent minutes. Others, however, believe the club is being careful for the right reasons, protecting a player who still needs physical development before facing the demands of weekly Premier League battles. This internal and external pressure has placed added scrutiny on Arteta's handling of young talents this season. While he has been praised for trusting academy graduates in the past, the balance has become harder to maintain now that Arsenal are competing on multiple fronts and aiming for silverware. Every decision carries weight. Resting senior players risks losing points, while overusing inexperienced teenagers risks injury or decline in confidence. There is also the broader question of what kind of loan would actually benefit Nwaneri, should the club eventually decide to pursue one. A move to a Premier League side fighting relegation could offer minutes, but expose him to a demanding environment that prioritizes survival over development. A Championship loan, on the other hand, might provide consistent matches, but at the cost of adjusting to a more physical style that does not always align with Arsenal's tactical identity. European options have been mentioned as well, though not confirmed. The possibility of joining a club in the Netherlands or Germany, leagues known for nurturing young talent, has been discussed quietly among observers. Yet Arsenal are hesitant, given how unpredictable such moves can be and how often they fail to produce the expected results. Meanwhile, Nwaneri himself remains focused and professional, according to those around the training ground. He is said to be eager for opportunities, but not frustrated or discouraged. The coaching staff admire his attitude, which only complicates the decision further. He is doing everything right, and still his future remains uncertain. As Arsenal approach the January window, the club finds itself at a crossroads. The next few weeks will likely be decisive, not just for Nwaneri's short-term career, but for how Arsenal choose to manage their most gifted prospects in an era of high expectations and relentless schedules. Any decision made now will be examined closely, not only because of what it means for Nwaneri, but because it will signal how the club intends to balance ambition with development as they move into the next phase of Arteta's project. Arsenal now face a difficult setback. Piero Hincapié may have to step into the North London derby under less than ideal circumstances after Gabriel's injury blow. The club is hoping that Hincapié's long late return trip to North London won't affect his readiness to replace Gabriel against Tottenham, because losing the Brazilian for such a crucial match is a major hit to Mikel Arteta's plans. Arsenal have already been forced to cope with key absences at various stages of the season, but Gabriel missing the derby presents a challenge of a very different magnitude. Naturally, the focus shifts to who will fill the gap on the left side of Arsenal's defense, and for many, the most logical answer is Piero Hincapié. The summer signing impressed during his only start for the club so far, an outstanding display at left centre-back in the League Cup win over Brighton. That night, he partnered with Christian Mosquera, who is also an option for Arteta on Sunday. One possible configuration would see William Saliba move to the left, with Mosquera taking his place on the right, depending on how heavily Hincapié's international travel weighs on Arteta's decision. And that travel is far from insignificant. The Ecuadorian defender is currently away with his national team. He captained Ecuador during their 0-0 draw with Canada, helping secure the clean sheet. But the real concern comes with his final international fixture. Ecuador face New Zealand in New Jersey in the early hours of Wednesday morning, UK time. The match kicks off at 1:30 a.m. and is expected to finish around 4 a.m. Only after that will Hincapié board his flight back to England, meaning he won't arrive in London until Wednesday afternoon at the earliest. From there, he will have just a handful of days to recover, settle back in, and prepare for one of the most intense fixtures of the season. The slight silver lining is that the derby falls late in the weekend, giving him as much time as possible to reintegrate. Still, the timing of his return is far from ideal and adds yet another layer of uncertainty to Arsenal's defensive preparations ahead of a match that could define their momentum for weeks to come. Beyond the logistical headache, Arteta and his staff must also consider the physical and tactical demands that a North London derby imposes. It is not the sort of match where a defender can arrive underprepared, particularly against a Tottenham side that has looked sharp in attack this season. Any hesitation, any lapse in intensity caused by travel fatigue, could be costly. Inside Arsenal, there is a quiet concern that the club may once again be walking a tightrope with its defensive depth. Over the past 2 seasons, injuries at the back have forced Arteta into uncomfortable choices, and Gabriel's setback reopens a conversation that the club hoped was behind them. The manager has repeatedly emphasized the importance of continuity across the defensive line, especially given how central the high defensive line and controlled build-up are to Arsenal's identity. Gabriel and Saliba have been at the core of that stability, and disrupting it inevitably changes the team's rhythm. Analysts close to the club have noted that Hincapié's profile fits the role well, confident under pressure, quick across the ground, and capable of progressing the ball with either foot. However, they also caution that he is still adapting to the Premier League's pace and physicality. Throwing him straight into a derby environment may accelerate his integration, but it also carries risk. Supporters have expressed mixed reactions as well. Many are eager to see Hincapié given a real opportunity, believing his style suits Arsenal's long-term plans. Others worry that asking him to deliver immediately, under difficult circumstances, could place unnecessary pressure on a player still in the early stages of adjusting to English football. The timing of Gabriel's injury also complicates Arsenal's broader goals. With a congested winter schedule approaching and the title race tightening, every match takes on heightened importance. Dropping points against Tottenham could shift momentum, not just in the standings but in confidence across the squad. It also forces Arteta to rethink how he manages minutes for defenders who have already logged heavy workloads this season. Club insiders say the staff have been preparing contingency plans for weeks, anticipating scenarios where international duties and injuries overlap. Yet even the best planning can be stretched thin when travel delays and late-night kickoffs are added to the equation. In the coming days, the medical and performance teams will conduct assessments to determine exactly how ready Hincapie is for Sunday's showdown. Arteta is expected to make a late decision, balancing long-term health with short-term necessity. The hope is that the Ecuadorian arrives in good condition, responds well to training, and can at least offer a reliable solution in Gabriel's absence. What remains undeniable is that Arsenal enter the derby under a new layer of pressure, forced to adapt, to trust their depth, and to test the resilience that has been a defining theme of their season so far.